2, 1, begin.
Good afternoon. I'm Jake Ward. I'm the president of the Connected Commerce Council. During normal times, the Connected Commerce Council, or 3C as we like to call it, is a resource for digitally empowered small businesses. We help businesses around the country of all industries connect with the digital tools and services and marketplaces that they need to build their businesses faster, to sustain themselves longer, and to grow in our small towns, big cities, whatever vertical they want to work in. But as we all know, these are not normal times. The past 16 months, the pandemic has ravaged the small business community throughout the country, particularly and especially minority-owned small businesses. In Georgia, in Savannah particularly, what we've seen is a real resilience among small businesses that have pivoted to online tools and services and worked with their local communities and policymakers to stay in business and prepare to build back and to recover. At 3C, we know that small businesses that have survived the pandemic are stronger today than they were 2 years ago. And they're also prepared to be more sustainable, more agile in a crisis. But today we're going to talk to some of these small businesses that have bridged the gap from crises to the rebuilding phase, as well as some of the local leaders in policy and small business advocacy in the Savannah area. But before we get started, I'd like to throw it over to Mayor Johnson and hear a little bit about what the city of Savannah is doing and the good news that's coming from Savannah. Mayor?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jake. Good afternoon, everybody from Savannah, Georgia, where it's about 84 degrees, kind of overcast, really rainy night last night, but it's always beautiful in Savannah. Again, thank you, Jake. Thank you to the Team 3C for thinking of us and for including us, to Paramount and all of our friends for helping us to tell Savannah's story. What a year it has been. It's been like a crazy, crazy year. We never would have thought that we would be going through some of these things. It was tumultuous. The pandemic ravaged our economy. It has changed our lives forever. And even in the midst of that, we were having these critical conversations around race and around social justice and around the police treatment and how they interact with each other. And this rose to the forefront of our social discourse. But for us, it was a resiliency. Number one, resiliency, and number two, innovation. That define life here in Savannah and across the country. Here in Savannah, we call resiliency plus innovation Savannah Strong. And that's what it was. And so this was especially true for our small business owners. Although we have Bill Hubbard from our chamber here, he will tell you that the crux of our economy is small business. And they have been able to step up in a major way. And I've been so impressed and so grateful for them, for their ability to adapt, their ability to work with us, to be able to get out to the forefront and make sure that make sure that people wore masks, make sure they washed their hands, make sure they watched their distance, and to maintain a minimal amount of operations here in the hosted city of the South. That is a reason why right now our hotels are over 100 plus occupancy. That's why our streets are filled. And that's why even now in 2021, after the worst year in our lifetime, that some of our businesses have reported their best days ever in their businesses. And so adapting to the necessary restrictions on business operations, again, implementing social distancing measures, following quarantine procedures, again, working with us. We created what was called Safe Savannah, working with our business community. Locally owned businesses managed to still continue to serve their communities, and they stepped up in a big way. They became their brothers and sisters keepers. They helped give out masks. They helped feed people. They helped open their doors to be able to have their employees to be able to help, all in the midst of while they were going through these very difficult times. And with this challenging influx of customers and other operational and financial challenges still weighing on these businesses, we still, and we should still continue to model this smart digitalization of the small business model. So that being said, community development has always been the focus for our team here in Savannah. community development, improving the lives of people that ultimately improves the lives of businesses. And so over the years, and I've been only mayor now for like 30 years, no, I've been the mayor for like 16 months. But I've developed an ever increasing appreciation for the role now the technology plays in supporting our economy. We recognize that we can never go back to normal. Normal is gone. There's a new normal. And so from us, that is using technology and leveraging technology to support our economy at all levels. From the small businesses that smartly use the online environment to reach customers, to the local and to the national technology companies that continue to make great investments to our city. We've recognized that we've been able to open up our world. The world is looking at Savannah because we've been able to do things on a big digital platform. So I recognize that there are a number of technological services, platforms, and tools that are available to small businesses. And today has been more crucial than ever before. And of course, while it never would have been a good time for a global pandemic to just totally change our lives and society, and we will all miss the local businesses that were unfortunately forced to close. But we also know that businesses emerge from this newer, better, with a stronger business model. And I know that the impact on the pandemic here on our small business community would not have been as positive if they were not able to reach customers online, if they were not able to stay connected and reach their employees virtually or otherwise adapt with the support of small business tools. So for us, that's a good thing. So pivoting to the online environment, that's been particularly important for minority-owned businesses. Many studies have shown us that Black and Brown-owned businesses were significantly less likely to receive public aid, including PPP loans. And we know a lot of people got PPP loans. But this truly underscored the need for equity and the need for minority-owned small businesses to access digital tools that enable them to adapt in the absence of reliable relief from the federal government. And so as government officials, citizens, economic group stakeholders, we will continue the necessary work toward a level small business playing field. And for us, that's equity, that's diversity, and that's inclusion. And that is now Savannah's DNA. And to date, free and affordable digital tools have proven to be a great equalizer in helping to level that field. Over the course of the pandemic, we saw social media platforms transform into sales and advertising channels. Online marketplaces become platforms for businesses to reach a global customer base, and software tools, which enabled employers to stay connected with their employees no matter where they are. That being said, if you are living somewhere that's cold, come on to Savannah. You can work from wherever you're at, and you can live right here in Savannah. We would love to have you. But generally, an online presence became necessary for sharing updates on safety protocols and hours, operational changes, and of course, other pivots. When I think about pioneers in Savannah who leveraged digital tools in the most effective ways, I think about Dr. Zalonia Williams with Patches and Ramondo Stewart with Sigma Graphics. During the relative science of the pandemic, Dr. Williams made and marketed customized patches to people who did not know and did not care about patches. Nobody was thinking about patches. I mean, that's just something we didn't think about. But during this quiet time, using digital platforms and online tools, she made patches hot in Savannah. Everybody wants patches in Savannah now. And now her market has expanded beyond our community. I'm still waiting on her to give me my patches. But the fact was that here a market niche was created that did not exist because she had the digital tools and the online platforms to be able to make it happen. She used videos, she used all kinds of various digital deployment and engagement tools to be able to help people recognize that they wanted a patch, even if they didn't know that they wanted a patch. Heads up to Zalonia for that. And then, of course, Ramondo Stewart with Sigma Graphics got to the front of the pandemic battle when the community needed masks. At one point, we were just covering our faces. We were just covering our faces on whatever. But Ramondo in his visionary leadership at Sigma Graphics, decided they were going to start customizing face masks. And so, you have masks all over the place now that have stuff on them because you were able to now have your cause somewhere because you had masks. And so, how do you know that you need a mask unless you know you need a mask? And why, if you're going to wear a mask, then wear a mask that has something on it that you like. And so that was done almost entirely using digital platforms and online tools. So again, we salute Ramondo Stewart and Sigma Graphics for all that they did when conventional marketing just did not work. The technology sector has also been a key driver of economic growth in Savannah over the last few years. And the continued development of the Savannah Logistics Technology Corridor has drawn investment from outside sources and sparked really tremendous growth from startup companies. And we are fostering now a community that encourages and values innovation and collaboration, and will continue to position our city as a hub for collaborative growth that lifts up our entrepreneurs. Georgia's political leadership, but myself included, in Savannah, we're committed to continuing to support these efforts by continuing to help the small business community build back better from the pandemic. And we realize the role, the very critical role, the very needed role that technology plays in that pursuit. And so again, I want to thank 3C, the Connected Commerce Council. I hope I said it right. Yeah, I think I said it right. The Connected Commerce Council, thank you for having me here today. Thank you for sharing my perspective and resiliency. Thank you for spotlighting Savannah and the great businesses here locally that we have that are making things happen. And thank you for recognizing the value that technology is going to play in further uplifting our community. And I would encourage Savannahans definitely, but also Georgians to embrace the role. I mean, it's here, embrace it. That technology platforms play in supporting our collective recovery. So I know I had a lot to say, but this is something I'm passionate about, something I'm excited about. And again, Jay, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We really appreciate your time and your leadership over the past 16 months. I can't imagine what it was like to come to office during all this, but it's worked out for the people of Savannah. So we appreciate that.
We're still here.
That's right. Back better than ever. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Let's take a few minutes now to hear from some Savannah-based businesses, some of Georgia's small businesses that have transitioned their businesses and survived the pandemic. What we find at 3C is that there is no singular small business story. They're all sort of universal, right? They're about perseverance and ownership and leadership, and about wanting to contribute to our community. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in, whether you're a bookstore or a film producer or a fashion designer, accessory designer, you can find your way to your marketplace and run your business more efficiently with the right tools. So with that, why don't I welcome in our first panel, Latricia Brown, Kawan Drayton, and Tia Acker. There you guys are. Wonderful. Welcome. Thank you for taking the time today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Consider this your obligatory warning to take yourselves off mute for the next 15 minutes or so that you're not speaking into a dead camera. Why don't we start by just sort of introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about your business. Tia, why don't we start with you?
Well, I'm Tia Acker-Moore, native of Savannah, and have several businesses, but in respect for today's platform, I'm representing More Books, LLC. It's a combination of myself and my husband. And our bookstore is an online bookstore. We are looking into doing brick and mortar. However, we are online and we sell just about every book that's out. If you see a book that you're interested in and it's not there, by all means, we have a listing that you can list that book in, and we can get it in within 48 hours. We are connected with several other bookstores across the country and listed as in a part of the 125 Black-owned bookstores on Oprah's list that comes out next month. So we're very excited for that.
Congratulations. That's wonderful.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Latricia?
Hi, I'm Latricia Brown, the owner of Trishby Style and Design and founder of Young Souls for the Polls. But for today, we'll be highlighting Trishby Style and Design. So we actually specialize in couture bridal alterations and special occasion alterations, but we also do custom ensembles, and that could be anything from custom suits, custom gowns, wedding, or event wear. And we were just voted for Best Tailor and Stylist in Savannah. So we also do photo shoot and video styling as well for wardrobes.
There's some high accolades going on here, Kwan. You're gonna make something up. If you haven't been voted the best up, just make something up. Nobody will know.
Yes. All right. Well, I'm Kewan Drayton. I run Red Eye Film Productions here in town, as well as the Savannah Underground. Pretty much Red Eye is a film production company that helps different businesses in town create high quality content. And the Savannah Underground is pretty much based on creating horror experiences based on Savannah's history. It's something that tourists have been wanting for a while, and we just decided to bring it to life. So we have some pretty awesome things to offer you guys.
That's wonderful. That's great. Thank you.
Can't
And thank you
wait.
guys again. It's gonna be great. So I know we have, let me just ask this general question. Whoever wants to go first, just put your hand up. What do you guys know now that you didn't know 16 months ago? What have you learned during the pandemic? What have you learned as you engage this dynamic environment where we didn't have tourists in our towns, right? I live in Charleston, same thing as in Savannah. It looked like a ghost town, pardon the pun, for several months, right? Where you can't have people walking into a storefront. But on the other side of the coin, you have a lot of online traffic and a lot of time to kill. What do you know now that you didn't know pre-pandemic? Anybody want to go first? Q1?
Yeah, so I learned that you pretty much have a bunch of different options on the digital platforms to help you validate your market and whatever it is that you're trying to do. I learned that in multiple different ways. Most people are used to, going door to door or, getting out there and meeting people in a physical form. But, I've learned so much about how you can actually validate your market in so many different ways with the analytics and all the different backends on social media platforms that can help you pinpoint your target audience.
We like to say that the only thing that separates small business from a successful small business is their ability to do math. If you can get your analytics right, you can find your audience, right? We're not confined by a geographic space anymore. It's a remarkable thing.
Absolutely.
Tia?
I would say contingency plans. I am always and have always been the what if person. So prior 16 months ago, I was thinking the same way I was thinking right now, like what if this happens? What if that happens? So we had a contingency plan in place. Of course, everybody wants the brick and mortar. It's what people can adapt to. It's comfortable. It looks pretty and all of those things. But my contingency plan starting out in our small business, having had a small business that I've been in for 8 years was, let's build capital. And I want to build enough capital where the overflow of the capital pays for the brick and mortar, and we're not just coming out of our pockets. And so even in having a partner, he is the money person. So he's the financial backer. He was the bank and all of those things. So he's just say, let's do it, let's run with it. But I had to be smart about it, not even knowing about the pandemic, but just in general. We have a retail giant in Barnes and Nobles, and I am a Barnes and Nobles junkie. So I could not come out and say, here's my brick and mortar, and I am up against the #1 global retail book giant. It's just that, you have to crawl. And so we're coming up on 3 years. And of course, in a 3-year period, we look at those plans that we had in year 1 and say, okay, where are we now? And here's what we can do. But I think for the most part, the last 16 months just really taught us all a lot of patience. We feel like, we get that EIN number and we get that LLC and we are just like shot off like a rabbit out the gate. We are full blown business. But this pandemic taught us patience and how to strategically work our plans and do things simple and smart. You don't have to have, just like Iwan said, you don't have to have all the bells and the whistles to be successful. And you said yourself, Jake, you just got to know how to do the math. So I'm still working on that.
Me too. Makes me feel any better. Me too. That's great advice, Tia. Thank you for that. Latricia, what do you know now that you didn't know pre-pandemic?
Honestly, I think probably the biggest lesson that I learned had to do with not necessarily being the person to do everything. With us not being in person, I ended up hiring a part-time virtual assistant. All of our bookings moved to online. Like, you don't have to call or talk to anyone, just go to the website. It taught us a lot about driving traffic to that website and really optimizing it and working smarter and not harder. At first, things did slow down, but then once we got the ball rolling on online booking and people ordering masks online, all the way from, I think the furthest order for custom masks, where I think it came from like California, actually. So like we went from being just the Savannah serving business to we're serving the entire world. It was really crazy. So it really broadened our market.
It sounds like you learned the most valuable lesson for any small business owner, which is to delegate some of that responsibility, because it'll flatten all of us, right? It's impossible.
A control freak, it's really hard. So yes, that was definitely a struggle that I got my hands around.
We have more than 16,000 small business members now, and I haven't met a single owner that isn't a control freak. Every type A personality is drawn to ownership. That's the nature of the business. Let me ask you this next and last question. We're going to run a little tight on time here, so take your time in answering, please. But we often refer to something we call the small stack. Large enterprises have stack of technology, right? An IT department that helps you build your servers, et cetera. But small businesses take things off the shelf. They use Google Analytics. They use a customer retention management platform like Infusionsoft or Constant Contact. We build websites with Squarespace. We have online commerce. We can sell things through Amazon or eBay or Etsy. And then something that all three of you touched on is, how do you build your marketplace, right? How do you use ads on Google or Facebook or Instagram to target that audience? Tell me about your small stack. What tools are you using? And just to accentuate the point that we've been trying to make for the past 15 months in Congress and at a state level, where would you be without these tools today? Why don't I go in reverse order, which, sorry, Latricia, that puts you at the head of the line. Tell me about your small stack.
So our very, very small stack, because most of what we do is still emailing our clients, for the most part, we ended up using a lot of Square marketing. Before the pandemic, I had never sent out an email blast to all of my clients. I had never updated them on what we were doing per COVID policies. I definitely feel like that forced us to take advantage of, well, we have 750 emails. Why aren't we talking to these people? So our small stacks like solely started focusing on email, and then just becoming way more efficient in using Instagram and Facebook ads to target exactly who we wanted to be talking to, versus just letting them walk into the door and talk to us. And a lot of what we do, it ends up being word of mouth, but now we started to capitalize on what we could do with those online platforms. And now we do have clients from, like we've had a client, she got married in Chile. So it really, really, really opened us up being able to market to people just because they went to the website, put in their email, and they want us to contact them.
And who hosts the site?
So Wix is who hosts our website.
Yeah. And is there, I apologize for not knowing, is there an e-commerce component of that? You use Square over the phone or through email?
So there was, because things are picking back up as far as like events and those sort of things, we're back to doing custom garments. And so we don't use as much e-commerce except for the online appointment booking.
And where would you be without those tools?
Oh, might be out of business. It would be significantly slower. I will say that we were able to ramp up so much that we ended up hiring a part-time virtual assistant and another alteration specialist. So it actually increased our revenue.
we refer to businesses like yours as digital drivers. They're folks who were prepared for, they did the planning, they did the redundancy, they built the sustainability into their market so that when crisis hit, it doesn't have to be a global pandemic, right? It can be a flood. We just got a tropical storm last night. Like there could be things that shut you down for a few weeks. You have to have that resiliency built in to your business plan. So you were one of 11 million businesses that we've counted that survived because of these tools. So nice job, good work.
Go us.
Go you. All right, Tia, tell me about your small stack.
Well, a lot of what Trish said. I use Wix also. I am a researcher first, and so I was on Instagram, and I have my cell phone in my hand all day long. All day. Okay. And so while people are talking on the phone, I'm using it to send out a graphic, a flyer, etc., market. I do it all day. And sometimes it's a lot for the people who follow me, but it's not for the people who follow me. It's for the people who don't. So what I noticed is that one night I'm on Instagram and this guy has started DJing and playing music and people are just randomly jumping in. And so that's when I started marketing and pitching all of my business. I would log out as one person, log back in as another, and pitch every last business in those groups. And so all of a sudden, you have all these celebrities who have nothing to do and they're actually responding. And that's all it takes for me is for one response. And then I figure out which one of my businesses I want to tie those celebrities to. And so with saying that, I utilize social media heavily, to the point where it has actually paid off. I have several celebrities who have one of my products. And even as it relates to the More books, we just wrapped up the breakout for Michelle Williams of Destiny Child, her new book. We just had an opportunity to host that. We were one of 50 small businesses that were invited to do that. And you're thinking, okay, here's a small bookstore. How did you skip the line? But it's that constant in their face type thing. I'm a firm believer that consistency brings currency and repetition brings revenue. So I'm going to overkill it every day, all day. And I utilize those platforms because yes, we were in a pandemic and people, they didn't know us quite yet. We only had 336 followers. And I tell small businesses, followers are not real money. So you can have 1 million followers or you can have 10, but if you have the consistency, you will build the business. And that's exactly what we did. And now we don't have to put out marketing every single day because people have become familiar with our bookstore. We intentionally, even though we're Savannah, we intentionally use the colors of Chicago Bears because that's my husband's favorite team. And Chicago had a huge literacy initiative going on in the September when we launched it. And so we piggybacked off that. We started sending information out. This is how we want to support and different things like that. And it streamlined all the way down to when school started and most people were online. We had the books, even down to the colleges were coming to us and saying, do you have the books? So we partnered with large corporations who produce books to get them in mass production. And we were able to have them come to our storage and we just divvied them out from there. So marketing was essential. Like I said, I am a researcher. So I knew that sending out a text blast or email blast while people were driving, I'm going to get the feedback. I'm driving, don't text me, I'm driving or whatever. So I would research and find out, when are people home? When are they reading? Who's watching TV? Who's not watching TV? Who's doing this? Who's doing that? And I would test it in little markets. And a key secret that I did is I changed my location on my social medias every 30 days. So you may think I live in Alabama, or someone else may think I live in Los Angeles, or someone else may think I live in Houston, and I'm right here in Savannah, Georgia, but they don't know that because that was my marketing initiative.
Girl, I'm taking notes over here.
She had some very good points.
Ooh,
I took a couple notes myself. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so I would say that our small stack was pretty much Google, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. All, they reach a different audience of different ages and demographics all together. But pretty much what we did was we created, when we first had the idea of coming up with the Savannah Underground, before we had a team, before we had, the manpower that we have now, we created a video kind of just showing exactly what it is that we wanted to do, kind of reenacting the experience on a digital base. And we put it on YouTube and then we put it on Facebook. And it actually went kind of viral on Facebook, which is why I say, it's easy for you to validate your market when you do something like that before spending, all these different marketing dollars or, trying to build it up before, validating that market. So we did that. And before we even knew that we were actually going to be able to do it, we were able to see that people were already asking, where they could buy tickets, how they could come, experience what we have. And, we went back to Wix with it, set up an events page, and then people just instantly started purchasing tickets, and we were able to start running our first few shows in March. And we felt confident about running those shows just because people were already talking about it before we even started our planning process. So social media, YouTube, which holds all the videos and things like that, and feeds it to Instagram, Facebook, all those different things, it played a huge part in allowing us to get, the validation we needed to, feel confident and move forward with the idea that we had.
It's wonderful. Thank you guys so much for your experience shared with the group, as well as some tidbits that I think people will be able to put into their own business plans. Be resilient, be strategic, and make really great content. It sounds like is the core value that we need to roll out. Thank you for your time today, guys. Good luck. We'll be in touch soon. It's great to hear success stories like this. It's remarkable. Okay,
thank you, Jake.
So let's.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Let's move on to some of the local business group leaders in Savannah. Bill Hubbard from the Savannah Area Chamber of Commerce, Lauren Cleveland, who's the Director of Data Intelligence and Digital Marketing for the Chamber of Commerce, Moncello from Greater Savannah Black Chamber of Commerce, and Katina from the Greater Savannah Black Chamber of Commerce. There you guys are on my screen. We got everybody. Now we're missing somebody. Who are we missing? Moncello, Bill. Oh, okay. I think we're just going to have to move forward from here. Thank you guys for taking the time today. We really appreciate taking a few minutes. I know it's been a weird 18 months, 16 months or so. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what the business environment is like in Savannah right now. Moncello, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, sure. So I think we're at a point right now where businesses are opening back up and kind of evolving and getting used to bringing the customers back in. But I think the main thing that we're seeing right now are many businesses are finding a way to think outside the box and trying to include what they did during the COVID, as far as different ways to sell product and still adopt and have those same ways that you did before. So a lot of businesses are at a tricky place right now and say, well, I did really well in this arena. Can I still implement this that we did before? And I think we see a lot of businesses are back up to full capacity, but there's still some businesses that are suffering, and some businesses that are still trying to find a way that the hit from the COVID have impacted them so well that they're really trying to get above it.
Thank you, Moncello. I appreciate it. Bill, what are we seeing out there?
Well, I think, like Moncello said, like the mayor said, we're very fortunate as a community. We came back in a measured way, but we came back quite early. So really, we've been functioning maybe in a controlled environment for quite some time. We're fortunate in Savannah to have a very diverse economy. So you've got manufacturing, port related logistics businesses due to the size of our port here. And that's very robust at this point in time. Most of them are doing numbers bigger than they did even in 2019 that were record years. Tourism is fully back. We're hitting basically 80 to 100% occupancies at this point in the game. Rate is rebounding, and that's a very large piece of our economy too. So we're fortunate there. Medical is large here. We've got two large competing medical entities that basically kind of draw from most all of Georgia, with the exception of about an hour and a half or so from Atlanta. And so medical is a large part. Of course, that is very dependent upon technology. We've got a large military function here, does about $4.9 billion a year with about 30,000 folks attached to that. And that's certainly been up and running for some time, though the bases closed up during the pandemic. All the activity and all the economic piece of it continued. And then you've got educational and government side of it. We're fortunate to have some great universities here, from Savannah State to Georgia Southern to South University and many others, though many of them went kind of different degrees of home versus remote versus on-site. all the employment side of it is still in place. All those schools are rebounding quickly. And then the governmental side, particularly because the PPP all stayed in function. So economically, as a community, we're fortunate, doing very well. As the mayor said, 80% of us is small business. You heard great presentations from folks prior to me, and Moncello now being on, related to their experiences. And that's really the lifeblood of this community, which is small businesses. We're fortunate to have about 2,200 members, but 80% of them are small businesses. And that's really where the strength of the economy is here.
Thank you, Bill. And Katina, what are you seeing out there in the broader Savannah small business community? Lessons we've learned, stories we can use as pointing us in the right direction towards recovery.
You know, I echo the sentiments of our president Moncello and Mr. Hubbard, of course. I think that what we learn most is adaptability. I think that our businesses learn to pivot very quickly and to adapt. I think that there were a lot of new trades and skills that were learned. And I think that businesses learn to push themselves beyond the limits that they originally thought that they had. And I think that benefited them in the end.
I think that's right. For what it's worth, our research says the same thing. The digitally driven report that the Connected Commerce Council published first in June of last year, and then a revised version towards the tail end of what I hope will be the last wave of COVID, said the same thing about Georgia and about Savannah, particularly that the pivot for a lot of small businesses who may have previously considered themselves primarily brick and mortar to an online footprint enabled thousands of small businesses to survive in Georgia. And as I mentioned earlier, 11 million throughout the country, which is not an insignificant number of jobs or revenue or services or pillars of our communities, right? I mean, that's a huge chunk of people that have to go to work every day. I am curious. So one of the things that we talk about a lot is a digital safety net, that the small businesses that prior to the pandemic were utilizing digital tools and services and selling on marketplaces were better prepared for this type of crisis. We heard Mayor Johnson mention earlier that there's never a good time for a global pandemic, but if you're going to have one, this is probably the best time. I couldn't agree more, right? We are able to pick up entire businesses and move them online. Unfortunately, particularly for minority-owned businesses and particularly for businesses in rural areas, we saw just a crushing lack of capital into those businesses, of loans, of PPP, et cetera. But for the digitally driven businesses, those folks that were already using those tools and services, we saw growth in revenue, growth in hiring, and a really advanced look, an advanced strategy of where we go from here. I'm wondering if you have any advice for your members, for the folks that you deal with every day, that you've learned over the past 18 months that you'll continue to sort of include in your educational materials, in your programming, and in your outreach efforts long after this is over. Katina, why don't I start with you and see if there's anything that falls under that category?
Sure. I think the advice, is just a continuation of what I'm stating, is that we have to learn to be adaptable. I also think there's an importance of continued education. The pandemic gave us an opportunity to pause and to reimagine our businesses, to revisit our missions, to revisit our vision, and to revisit our plans. If it did nothing else, it definitely taught us to broaden our outlook on what our particular businesses were focusing on before. And so as we continue through and as we face other crises and as we grow our businesses, I think we have to continue to keep in mind that we have to be able to reimagine our business, to be adaptable to change, and to grow from these experiences.
I think that's great advice. That resilience that comes with being adaptable, being agile, isn't just for global pandemics, right? It's for everyday use by every small business. Moncello, do you have any guidance, advice that you would sort of bake into your primer for a small business in the world right now?
Well, we're just hoping that, a lot of those small businesses kind of really think through what digital marketing really is. We're talking here about, digital marketing, and after the pandemic, it's 2 or 3 things that should take away from small business as we think about digital marketing. One is that you can target your market. That's very important when you talk about a small business who are used to letting people walk in and walk out of their business. You still need walk up customers, but one, you can target your market. Two is more cost effective. That's important because when you ask a small business who's already having issues with funding to go out there and put 20% in marketing, that's kind of hard for you. But when you look at digital marketing, where it's cost effective to do digital marketing compared to old advertising marketing, is more cost effective. Three, you can be on the same playing field as some of the big brothers in your same industry, right? Because online, they don't really necessarily care that your restaurant compared to a big chain is different, right? It's all about SEO. And if anybody knows, we can get more small business to understand what SEO is, to try to make sure your business is at the top, that your business has reviews, that your business. You can go right now and Google law firm right now in your city, and you can find that you can probably find a major law firm, and you may find a smaller law firm that's on the same page. What stops you from being there? But one of the things that have to be related, we talk about the marketing, but we also have to talk about the conversion rate, right? We all talk about content marketing and digital marketing, but what is your conversion rate optimization on that marketing? And I think digital marketing offers you that. And so if I was giving it an advice, I would research what that conversion rate, pay for a company, get someone to say, okay, I'm bringing in, because the fourth part of the thing, I said three things. The fourth part is digital marketing is measurable. So, and that's what I love about it, that it's measurable. And so if I know it's measurable, I could come back and look at it and see what is my conversion rate. If you went out there and like old school and print out 5,000 flyers and put around town, it's kind of hard to kind of measure that. Who came away, they didn't come in with the exact flyer itself. But when you talk about analytics, you can kind of have you can look at it, you can measure it, and you can see what impact my business had because of it.
It's not too hard to equate that flyer advertising marketing to old school newspaper advertising.
Right.
It's the idea of going backwards is a little scary. Something we'll touch on in just a second when we come back to policy questions and where we go from here. Bill, do you have any anecdotes and advice for your members and for future members?
Well, I think Moncello and Katrina hit it perfectly. It's certainly reimagining what you can do, and the pandemic gave us a lot of time to do that. For so long, small businesses just couldn't get away from the cash register. They couldn't leave it, and now you've got such an opportunity to compete on a different level, compete in a different place. The targeting that Moncello talked about is huge and incredible. And again, it's your imagination that maybe holds you back on exactly how to go do the targeting. We can all go buy access to everybody's GPS and where their car went. And you can target that and cross-reference it against so many other things. You can figure out where everybody's been. In a 20-minute period, you can send messages to everybody's cell phone sitting in a room. So it's all about your imagination. It's about partnering up with the right companies that can give you what it is you want and having that relationship. And I think Moncello hit it perfectly. So that's I think really what it's all about. And then there's so many tools that maybe on one hand help your business. We hear everybody right now talking about looking for employees and the challenge of finding folks. And you've got so many platforms, Indeed being one of them, where you can go and spread your look so much broader than you could have before, that you get a much better opportunity to fill those vacancies. And small business of all gets hurt the most if they don't have those critical people in place. So I think Moncello hit it perfectly.
So all three of you maybe inadvertently touched on something that I'd really like to get your thoughts on. We found that there are two largest barriers to entry for small businesses to become digital drivers, to be more resilient and agile in a crisis. The first is education, right? There is a belief that it's going to be harder to use Google Analytics than it actually is, or it's going to be more complex to put QuickBooks as your backend than it necessarily is. And that is certainly the case for an older generation of small business owners. And for those who fall under the second category, which is apathy, right? The number one problem with digital tool adoption is I'm doing fine. I don't need it, we're fine. And that apathy that comes from success, or at least a feeling of success and sustainability. I'm not saying that every small business wants to grow up to be a Fortune 500 company. We know that actually is not the case at all. Most small business owners want to be able to serve their community, serve their employees, build a loyal customer base, and be in charge of their own destiny. They're not trying to take down a Fortune 500 competitor, it's nice to compete with them, don't get me wrong. But the real key to that is you have to be agile in your approach so you can be agile in your outcome. Which brings me to my question. We just heard from 3 small businesses who made it very clear that without access to digital tools and services, without being able to find their audience through analytics with more accurate advertising, and to be creative when they reimagine what their business model looks like, they would be out of business. How do you feel about attempts by Congress and some attorneys general throughout the country to reduce the accessibility of those tools and services by going after what they call big tech? Specifically, there's antitrust bills that just passed the House Judiciary Committee that are targeted at Apple, Google, Facebook, and Amazon that we, full transparency, have a real problem with, but I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on the applicability, on the outcome, the effect that those would have on your members and on the business community at large. Katina, why don't I start with you, if that's okay? Sorry, you're just first on my screen. I'm happy to go to Moncello first if you'd like.
I was like, we're going to go reverse order again, but that's okay. You know, we all agree that competition is important and that there is a role for government to play in, you know, regulating bad actors. But the conversation we just had is perhaps the best proof and point on why we should be concerned with such an extensive legislative package aimed specifically at technology companies. You know, we just spent an hour speaking about unrivaled importance of technology for the small business community. And as you said, this package of legislation directly targets the very companies that provide the tools and the platforms that our members, such as the ones on this panel, rely on and have relied on to operate and survive during this pandemic and moving forward. So we can't ignore the potential consequences of legislation that would make it more difficult for these companies to provide the essential small business tools. I believe rather than rushing to attack these companies, we would hope that lawmakers will take the time to, you know, consider the small business perspective, particularly with so much before Congress right now, both from the economic recovery to infrastructure, you know, and everything in between.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Moncello, what do you think? Have you heard any of your members say that they can't believe they have to compete with Facebook? That's a thing that happens, is it?
Well, that's not a thing that's happening, of course, right now. But you know, some of those things are coming down the pipeline, and depending on how involved we are, the important thing is that, you know, we make sure that there's information out to our members as this stuff comes down. We're happy to have a mayor that's on here right now that's supportive of our chamber and our small businesses. As Bill said earlier, 80% of his members are small business. I would go on to say 100% of our members are small businesses. And so protecting those businesses are really important to us. And so we're definitely involved. We're at the Capitol. We're in the places where all of these things are happening and legislation is being passed. And we're really being there, being an advocate for our businesses, because we know that in majorities of most cities, especially here in Savannah, small businesses make up your city.
Phil, what do you think? Has Congress lost its mind? Where do we go from here?
Well, if they've lost it, that's not necessarily new. I guess from my perspective, I think we all deserve privacy, but I think we all have a responsibility to decide how much. So I like the concept that we have some tools available, whether it's your cell phone or whatever it is, that if you choose to and you want to be particularly private, you can do some of that. I personally don't buy that for me at all. I like the fact that I can look for a car, a pair of shoes, and then all of a sudden Google's sending me ads the next morning. Or 10 minutes later. I think the other thing that personally I'd like to see, and I'm not speaking for the chamber, but I think the idea of anonymous messaging or anonymous handles in, for example, the Facebook world has been hugely harmful. I think people use that as a platform to say things that they would never say face-to-face to people if their name was attached to it. And if you're not willing to say it with your name attached to it, you shouldn't. So I would love to see that anonymous nature go away. I don't think that would hurt anything. I love the targeting and the segmentation. I think Kwan said it earlier. I love the proliferation of videos. We did 75 videos alone last year, and I think that's the future of all this. But there are some adjustments I wouldn't mind seeing at the federal level. And I think the biggest thing that I just feel uncomfortable with is when people can use some sort of synonym name and then get away with saying the most hurtful things in the world. I think that divides the community more than anything else.
I agree with you. And if Congress wants to have that conversation, we can certainly suit up for it. But Twitter's not even in their crosshairs for this competition bill or these competition bills. It's feels like a missed opportunity to have a broader conversation about civility without harming small businesses. Guys, thank you very much for your time today and for your leadership, on behalf of your members, on behalf of Savannah and Georgia generally. The Connected Commerce Council, connectedcouncil.org, continues to be a resource for research and access to private and federal funds for small businesses that still need it. We're here to help in any way that we can and to support your great organizations, Savannah Chamber of Commerce and the Greater Savannah Black Chamber of Commerce. We appreciate you guys. Also, for everybody on the line, take a minute to go to Trish B. Stylin, More Books, and Red Eye Film Productions. Frequent and visit your small businesses. This is how we build back our community and our economy. Thank you again for the time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your time and for hanging out with us today. We really appreciate it.
Been a blast.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you very much. Appreciate what you put together.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, everybody. Savannah strong.
That's right.